My background for starting as a CEO for Questback is actually three important things. One is the background I have from the IT industry. I'm working in the industry for 15 years, I know it very well. And the second is my international experience. I've been running people from Australia in the east to the US in the west for many years. And the third is the fact that this is the third time that I will create a high growth machine developed out of legacy business infrastructure. So after I've done it successfully two times, I now think I know how to do it. When you start as a new CEO, it's important that you have a detailed plan. And the plan should not last for more than 90 days. That's my experience. The US president is spending 100 days. In the business, we don't have time to that. So let's settle with 90 days. So those 90 days, I had a very detailed plan that actually was broken down to day by day. And there was two aspects around what I did that I really spent a lot of time with. One was to have a detailed 20-minute session with each of our employees. And Questback has around 250 employees. So I asked the employees three questions. What are we doing wrong or what is broken? What do we need to do to succeed? And give me good advice as a CEO. That information then together with the customer information, because the next thing I did was to spend 30 customer interviews in 6 countries. I asked them detailed questions about our products, our marketing, our support, and so on. So those two sources of information actually created the change program that I come to put in place after my first 90 days. The most challenging aspect of starting to work with the potential of a company is actually dealing with the past. And leaving the past behind you, decoupling some of the thought patterns is important because there's a tendency that everything you say about the future comes from the past. And if you want to be innovative and create the growth and make some change, you actually need to deal with the past history in a company. And the way to do that is actually to create multiple future scenarios on what the company can become good at and how big we can become and what type of offerings and services we might have and how our organization will look like. So we created several options of that, discussed that in the company, just to have some creative sessions and get the input into the potential. The most important part for communicating to the organization how to go forward is to be crystal clear about the strategy. And the strategy is about answering 3 questions. Which products, what do you want to sell? Where and to whom are you going to sell it? In other words, which markets? And thirdly, how are you going to organize yourselves to beat the competition? So by crystallizing the answers to those 3 questions, you can create a path which enables the organization to follow you. Well, the most important thing I did after the 90 days, when we have crafted the main elements of the strategy, then was actually to start converting the strategy into actionable items in the organization. And I created a strategic change program, which we referred to as GROW, which is G for growth, R for R&D, and O for one company. And under each of those elements, we had 12 focus areas we identified, and we created projects underneath each of them that were then actually putting the strategy into real life. And then creating that plan is normally what I refer to as the missing link in a lot of companies, because strategies has a tendency to be fluffy, being like a pie in the sky, just being out there, that is really not translated into what can I do as an employee to make a contribution to the company. So doing that the right way with activities, deadlines, assigning person to certain activities is really crucial. The aspects for making people follow the strategy once you have planned it is actually to make sure that it actually gets done. So you actually do what you're going to say that you are doing. And when you get things done, you get an acceptance in the organization. And people automatically start following that this strategy is for real. We are actually going to do it. So that's one key element. The other element is actually then creating the innovation aspects around the fact that the strategy might not necessarily be a static thing. It's a dynamic thing, so it constantly changes. So there's always people in the organization that should challenge the strategy, doing a little bit of skunk work, exploring new areas, coming up with new ideas. And during now, the period that followed after my first 90 days, we have had new ideas. And those ideas are actually going to change the company. And that's because we have then encouraged people to actually challenge the existing thinking. The biggest pitfalls for driving change normally is that you start driving change without having the right context for doing it. In other words, gaining acceptance in the organization. And my experience as a leader is that if you listen to the people in the organization and then implement the change, then you will have acceptance. If you start doing change without having listened to the people, that change is going to fail. So that's one very important pitfall to try to avoid. I think the second is actually then involving the employees in your idea generation. So, and the third area of pitfalls that is a tendency to do is that you actually turn your back to the customer. So understanding the feedback from the customer and what the customer's opinions are is very, very important. So before I started, I think it was actually 30 days before I started, I prepared a plan, a detailed activity plan that I shared with the board for how I'm going to spend my first 90 days. And I was very clear with the expected output of what that's going to be. And I said to the board that I need that peace and quiet to actually work with the organization and with the customers to figure out a way forward on how we're going to transform the company. So I made that as a prerequisite when I actually communicated with the board.